One time, this was actually very recently, I hopped into an Uber and they were blasting Christian music while I was reading, you guys, the raunchiest Harry Potter fan fiction where Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy fall in love and have a bunch of gay sex. And I just kept reading it. I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna stick with this. And it was so much fun. Like, while, someone is singing to love God and Jesus, it was like, and then Draco bent Harry over. Do you guys know who Lilith is? Lilith is Adam's first wife, theorized to be the first wife of Adam, and a primordial she-demon. Love it. Lilith is cited to be is cited as having been banished from the Garden of Eden for not complying with and obeying Adam. So basically the mythology of Lilith is that she was Adam's first wife, but she refused to be subservient to Adam, even though, according to whatever system he wanted to set up, like, women would be subservient. She was like, absolutely not. So she was banished to hell. She became like the queen of hell. Super Pete wants to get with Lilith so bad. Bro, me too. She's got to be so good in bed. You're joking. Christianity steals everything. Yes, they do. But look, maybe I'll be Lilith for Easter. Oh, is this supposed to be Lilith? Interesting. One of the main goddesses of the Mesopotamian pantheons, most probably Ereshkigal, the goddess of love and war. So many goddesses of love and war and strategy and wisdom. Inanna, the oldest deity that we know of. Also, Inanna was the oldest deity we know of, the goddess of love in Sumer, I believe. And also the first ever, or the oldest record we have of a written poem or poetry was written by Enheduanna, who was the female author who wrote about Inanna. Oh my gosh, I have 4 subscribers now, you guys. I don't know. Thank you. Enheduanna, let's look her up. I did a research paper on her back in the day. The oldest known, where did it go? The earliest known named author in world history. Now, let's be so for real. There probably is older written work in ancient Asia, and probably, well, I don't know if it's still kind of holding it down. I know this is Wikipedia. Maybe it is the oldest. Yes, Sumerian literature. I was right. Okay. The Exaltation of Inanna feature her as the first person narrator, and other works such as the Sumerian temple hymns. I think she was son of Sargon the Great, or she was the daughter of Sargon the Great. Yeah. So Sargon was the first king, right? Sargon was the first king of the Akkadian Empire. This is the first empire ever in existence. We basically have him to you guys, stop subscribing. No, don't stop subscribing. That's so nice. Thank you. You guys, I now have 5 subscribers. What? I don't know what to do with that. Okay, I promise this time next week I will have emotes and things to offer in return. Anyway, I'm so embarrassed. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much. Okay. Sargon the Great, the first king ever of the first empire ever. We can probably trace a lot of capitalism back to this, right? Well, actually, you guys have heard me talk about how the agricultural revolution is the time period in human history that we have to thank for pretty much every hierarchical institution we have. Well, except for white supremacy, because there weren't white people involved, but patriarchy, organized religion, and capitalism. Why? Because the agricultural revolution was the first time that humans became, they stayed in one spot to cultivate the land, right? Before that, for literally hundreds of thousands of years, humans were nomadic hunter-gatherers. So they would, I'm about to blast off here. Okay. See this book right here? Sapiens, Yuval Noah Harari, an incredible historian. The subtitle of this book is A Brief History of Humankind. The agricultural revolution we have to thank for, again, all of these hierarchical structures, because For hundreds of thousands of years, we were nomadic hunter-gatherers. And then at one point, essentially like the population of the villages grew vast enough that being nomadic became more of a burden than it was for, 20 people versus 2,000 people. 20 people is going to be a lot easier to mobilize and hop around during the seasons. And so they decided to instead work the land so that they could have food all year round. And they were like, okay, look at this field. Let's plant crops and let's plant so much food that we can have enough to eat year round instead of just following the seasons and eating as much as we need as we go. So like in the nomadic hunter-gatherer societies, we only ate and used as much natural resources as we needed because then we would just move on. And we see this even more recently in modern history with indigenous cultures like the Native Americans. And they were not nearly as wasteful as the capitalist regimes in Europe in the same time period, right? So this kind of cultural worldview was maintained throughout history, but unfortunately, obviously, when Europeans came over and started expanding colonialism and imperialism, etc., we kind of wiped away that cultural world. Well, it's not wiped away, but we do not invite it to be systemically as valid as capitalism. So about 10,000 years ago, during the agricultural revolution, when we did start, the villages were like, okay, we just can't travel as much anymore. Let's plant enough food so that we have it year round. This is the first time in human history that we had a surplus of goods. This is the first time that we were not just using as much as we needed in that moment, and we started planning for the future. And a lot of really great things happened as a result of the agricultural revolution. One of them being we started thinking more long term, and we started being more innovative for how we could cultivate the land so that we could get even more food and strip the land of even more natural resources. Now, at first, this probably didn't look as drastic as modern capitalism, which has led to the issue of climate change now, right? Like they weren't cutting down, tons of square miles of forests 10,000 years ago. They were just maybe kind of pilfering in their local area a little bit more than they had been when they had just been nomadic hunter-gatherers. Well, then, once there was a surplus of food, they had to start thinking about the distribution of that surplus of food. And that is when a priest class was formed. And the priest class was the original intertwining of religion and like a governmental administration, because it was all interconnected with like the sacrifice to, at the time, female fertility goddesses so that we could have a bountiful harvest. And it was the priest class that was in charge of how much you should sacrifice or tithe to their kind of administration. And then the priest class would also be in charge of kind of predicting how much prosperity the land would have according to how much you sacrificed. And this is like the original intention of animal sacrifice. This even eventually kind of got warped into human sacrifice, not as prominent as animal sacrifice or just the sacrifice or the giving or tithing of your surplus grain to the priest class, but it's all interconnected. So that is literally the first time that we had a surplus. Like that was and now here we are 10,000 years later, and capitalism reveres surplus more than anything at the direct exploitation of the working class. And so it's kind of crazy that all of the systematic hierarchies were developed around the same time, because again, in nomadic hunter-gatherer societies, there also was not a division of gender roles as much as there is in the hierarchical patriarchy that developed as a result of the agricultural revolution, when instead of everyone being hunter-gatherers, the men were more inclined to work in the field, and the women who were pregnant 9 months of the year and were having, a dozen kids per lifetime, it was more sensible for them to stay at home because they would be pregnant half of their goddamn lives. And so the gender roles were also the more rigid gender roles were also a result of the agricultural revolution. And organized religion, also a result of the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago, because this priest class was the first time that the worship of higher beings or these mythological creatures was systematic. And that is how they made decisions to distribute the surplus bounty of harvest amongst their community members. It was all kind of codified all at once. So 10,000 years later, we have these ingrained hierarchies that our ancestors did use for totally valid reasons. They were being so innovative. They were redesigning human society after hundreds of thousands of years of nomadic hunter-gatherer societies. Like, it made total sense for them to be like, okay, how can we build something better? And with that in mind, because we had the transition from these polytheistic, egalitarian, more equal nomadic hunter-gatherer societies, because we had that transition from that to what I think is the natural progress of human evolution to a hierarchical, capitalistic, surplus-oriented, rigidly defined gender roles, and organized religious nature of this next phase in human evolution, why is it so difficult for us to wrap our minds around us evolving past this into something better? And that is why I talk about patriarchy, white supremacy, organized religion, and capitalism as like the four largest systems of hierarchy that are intertwined in the same exact goddess damn issue that results in the wealth gap, that results in this 1% on top exploiting the working class. That is why I think all of these issues are interconnected, and why it's kind of difficult for me to always bring up every single aspect. But because, you know, on YouTube, it would, like, the YouTube algorithm would much prefer it if I solely talked about atheism, right? Just as far as, like, you know, keywords and search terms and all of those things. The YouTube algorithm would prefer it if I solely talked about, like, socialism or leftist political matters. But I refuse, or it would like it if I solely talked about feminist issues. But I refuse. I think all of these issues are interconnected. I will continue to talk about all of them.